So the part of your mind that you are currently keeping separate from the rest of your mind, which is the Holy Spirit, needs to be willing to return to the rest of your mind. And as I've said before, this is something no one else can cause you to do. The key word here is as you are willing, not willfuling, but willing to return the part of your mind that needs healing to the higher part, and thus render your creating undivided. Now, continuing, as a therapist, you yourself tell your patients that the real difference between neurotic and healthy guilt feelings is that neurotic guilt feelings do not help anyone. This distinction is wise, though incomplete. Let us make the distinction a little sharper now. Neurotic guilt feelings are a device of the ego for, quote, atoning, unquote, without sharing. Therefore, and I'm interrupting here, this kind of guilt is something that is processed and experienced entirely within you. And so you, without sharing it with anyone, experience the guilt and come to a conclusion that you're not going to do this anymore. But you haven't shared it with anyone. It's private. Neurotic guilt feelings are a device of the ego for, quote, atoning, unquote. In other words, it's not really atonement, without sharing, and for asking pardon without change. You see, that's why you must keep it a secret. Because if you didn't keep it a secret, you'd have to change. The ego never calls for real atonement and cannot tolerate forgiveness, which is change. Your concept of healthy guilt feelings, and mind you, this idea of healthy guilt feelings and neurotic guilt feelings isn't something that only trained psychologists understand. You all understand it perfectly well, too. Your concept of healthy guilt feelings has merit, but without the concept of the atonement, it lacks the healing potential it holds. The healing potential that atonement holds. You made the distinction in terms of feelings, which led to a decision not to repeat the error, which is only part of healing. This is very important. You made the distinction in terms of feelings, which led to a decision not to repeat the error, which is only part of healing. Your concept lacked the idea of undoing it. Mary Baker Eddy recognized the same underlying truth here when she said, "You are not truly healed until the liability to be ill is overcome." Healing goes all the way. Guilt must go away completely. The feeling of guilt, the call of guilt, if it is healed, is eradicated from your experience. Continuing, what you were really advocating then was adopting a policy of sharing without a real foundation. And this is important too. When there's a real foundation, when the healing of guilt has occurred, because there's a real foundation, it is cleansed from your mind. And the liability to feel guilty or indulge in guilt will not occur again. Continuing, I have come to give you the foundation, so your own thoughts can make you really free. You have carried the burden of the ideas you did not share, and which were therefore too weak to increase, but you did not recognize how to undo their existence because you had made them. A key point here, you cannot cancel out your past errors alone. They will not disappear from your mind without remedy. The remedy is not of your making, any more than you are. Listen to this. The atonement cannot be understood except as a pure act of sharing. Sharing of what? Of an idea, the sharing of a truth, the sharing of an insight, the sharing of a trigger to awakening. No. A sharing of your essential being. A sharing of you with your brother. So that you're able to say, I recognize myself in him. And so that your brother can say, I recognize myself in him. You see? Involvement. Actual connection. Not the bouncing back and forth of wonderful ideas that may end up being very valuable. You haven't given, you haven't engaged in a pure act of sharing until what's been shared is you. Continuing, that is what is meant when we said it is possible, even in this world, to listen to one voice. If you are part of God and the sonship is one, you cannot be limited to the self the ego sees. Every loving thought held in any part of the sonship belongs to every part. And every son or daughter in the sonship belongs to every other daughter or son in the sonship, because you are all one if you're willing to abandon your privacy, finally, and recognize yourself in your brother, and recognize your brother as you. Again, every loving thought held in any part of the sonship belongs to every part. It is shared because it is loving. Sharing is God's way of creating, and also yours. Your ego can keep you in exile from the kingdom. But in the kingdom itself, it has no power. And you know what? As I've said over and over, your ego keeps you in exile from the kingdom of heaven by causing you to define the kingdom of heaven as, quote, dirty word, the world, unquote. So that you look at the kingdom of heaven every day. Every day the kingdom of heaven confronts you, and you don't see it. Ordinarily you think of exile as a matter of being removed from your homeland. But this exile is you exiled right in the middle of your homeland, because there isn't any place else for you to be removed to. Continuing. You have become willing to receive my messages as I give them without interference by the ego. So we can clarify an earlier point. We said that you will one day teach as much as you learn, and that will keep you in balance. The time is now, because you have let it be now. You cannot learn except by teaching. I heard one voice because I had learned that learning is attained by teaching. And I'm going to add, I learned that I couldn't be the teacher. And that's why I keep telling you that you must have something that is apparently not you to yield to. Because until you learn to yield, you're still going to maintain this false sense of authorship and authority that you fool yourselves with. And there's no humility in it, and there's no joining in it, and there's no defenselessness in it. And so the Holy Spirit, which is you only, nothing more than your right mind, is something you have to yield to. And I'm making it very clear to you that until you yield to it, it will seem to be different from you. Continuing. I heard one voice because I had learned that learning is attained by teaching. I understood that I could not atone for myself alone. Atonement has to be offered to a brother by you. And in your willingness, under whatever the circumstances are, to offer atonement to your brother, you receive it. You can't receive it if the desire and the love is not present enough for you to want to give it to your brother even before you have it. This is not heady stuff, is it? This is very fundamental, very grounded. You don't get a spiritual high from the idea, but you will get an ultimate spiritual high from embodying the idea and actually loving your brother and sister. Continuing. Listening to one voice means the will to share the voice in order to hear it yourself. You don't get the gift until it's your desire to extend the gift to another, and then you get it. The mind that was in me, continuing, the mind that was in me is still irresistibly drawn to every mind created by God, because God's wholeness is the wholeness of His Son. Now, continuing, turning the other cheek does not mean that you should submit to violence without protest. When something wrong is occurring, you must dare to express the unyielding immovability of truth and integrity. You must object. You should, repeating, turning the other cheek does not mean that you should submit to violence without protest. It means that you cannot be hurt and do not want to show your brother anything except your wholeness. Listen to this carefully. You object, but not because you're hurt. You object because what is being objected to does not represent in your brother what he divinely is, and you will not join in confirmation of his expression of what he is not. You respond by objecting. You don't react. When you respond with objection from the experience of wholeness, nothing you do convicts the brother of the behavior you're objecting to. Understand that when the objection arises out of reaction, you are therapizing. You are finding a means of coercing your brother into certain already existing, mutually agreed upon definitions of behavior through the use of guilt. And that will leave you as an unhealed victim, because you will have to maintain your victimization in order to back up the guilt that you're trying to therapize your brother with to get him to behave properly. And it will not lift your brother out of the very dream that caused your brother to behave in a way that was inappropriate. You see this? Reaction and the demonstration of hurt is the way the ego maintains control over your brother in order to keep him bound to his ignorance, and also in order to see to it that neither one of you is healed of the perception that you could be hurt or that you could hurt another. or that you could be hurt, or that you needed to hurt someone else. Is this clear? Is anyone? I don't want to be going too fast here. Okay. Continuing. Show him that he cannot hurt you, and hold nothing against him, or you hold it against yourself. And as I said, you keep both of you bound to the experience of no healing. Continuing. Teaching is done in many ways, by formal means, by guidance. Now, I'm not speaking of divine guidance here. By formal means, by guidance, and above all, by example. Teaching is therapy because it means the sharing of ideas, and the awareness that to share them is to strengthen them. The union of the sonship is its protection. Now, why was that sentence put there? It sounds like one has changed the subject. Teaching is therapy because it means the sharing of ideas. When all are sharing everything with all, that is absolute unity. When no one is withholding anything from any part of the sonship is indivisible, undivided. Therefore, the sentence, the union of the sonship is its protection. Conversely, you could say the splintering or disintegration of the sonship is its vulnerability. Make sense? Yes. The ego cannot prevail against the kingdom because it is united. And the ego fades away and is undone in the presence of the attraction of the parts of the sonship which hear the call of the Holy Spirit to be as one. Now, if the call of the Holy Spirit is to be as one, then it means that you all, in hearing the call and accepting the call, will begin allowing for connection with your brothers and sisters, with each other, in the context of witnessing for what is true about them, that is also true about you, which means that there's no way for you to stand as the beneficent giver of the acknowledgement of their worth because it's clearer to you or more true about you than it is about them. Do you see? That in witnessing for the best in your brother, for his divinity, because you understand that you are both nothing less than what God is being, it brings the two of you into a state of pure equality, oneness. No superior, inferior dichotomy. You know what? None of you are going to find your invulnerability until it becomes your goal to demonstrate to your brother his invulnerability. Not as an intellectual task, not as a behavioral task, but because you don't want to experience any further severance from your brother. Because you don't want to experience any further severance from the brotherhood. And because you don't want to experience any further severance from your Father, whose existence is the proof of your sonship, and therefore of your reality, and therefore of your validity. Again, nothing heady here. Continuing. I cannot forget my need to teach what I have learned, which arose in me because I learned it. What is it that arose because I learned it? My need to teach what I have learned. Why? Because in order to have the learning, you must share it. If you keep it private and do not share it, and do not connect with your brother, you don't demonstrate your oneness, and you are still as asleep as you ever were. Continuing. I call upon you to teach what you have learned, because by so doing, you can depend on it. Make it dependable in my name, because my name is the name of God's Son. Oh boy. Oh, God's Son. Be careful. I'm not the only begotten Son of God. That is not a special designation. The minute you acknowledge God, who you are begins to become clear to you. As long as you are not denying the Father, you are not actively denying and obscuring from yourself your own identity. So, make it dependable in your name, because your name is the name of God's Son or daughter. Make it dependable by acknowledging your source, so that you might know, and I mean truly know with a capital K, who you are. So that you come back to integrity. So that you come back into the full conscious experience of who you are and what your function is. Why? So that you can now enjoy a new glorious position? No, so that you can share it and make it your own. As long as it's just an idea, it hasn't become yours. Continuing. What I learned, I give you freely. And the mind which was in me rejoices as you choose to hear it. The Holy Spirit atones in all of us by undoing, and thus lifts the burden you have placed in your mind. It does it by the undoing of guilt, and therefore its eradication. It does it by undoing the liability to be ill,